Okay, councillors, we'll make a start. Sorry. Tame, would you like to open the meeting, please?
Would everyone please stand?
Before I do, firstly, I just want to acknowledge and thank the support and the event last night for Manawa at the Parapara Garden. Lovely event in the community. Lovely to see us working together as Kirikiri. E te atua kaharawa kwenei mātou e tuku whakamoe ki a koe kia pāmai tō ringa ki runga i a mātou katoa e hui tahi nei i tēnei rangi. Mo te tāone nui o Kirikiri roa, manaki tia mātou i rungi te tika me te pono, kia kore e kōtiti te waka o te kaunihira o Kirikiri roa, me ngā kaimai katoa, koenei mātou a whakawhetai i rungi te ingoto mātou kai whakaora, ake, pai mātou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Tame. Thank you.
Thank you, Tame. Ngā mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa. Good warm greetings to you all after your long break. Of course, you know, we have seen a number of you in and out of the office, but I hope you all feel refreshed. There's a number of people who look very refreshed out there, so that's a good thing. And we could possibly change that for you by about the end of March. You're that optimistic, Rob.
And I think he's just come for a rest.
Yeah.
I was relaxed until 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. However, we've missed our little babies, so we're looking forward to seeing them both at some stage. All right, so thank you, Council. The agenda is as circulated, so I'll move that the agenda be accepted. I forgot to do apologies, but I'll get back to that. So seconded by Councillor Bunting. Apologies are Jeff. I haven't received any other apologies.
No, that's just this one, Jeff.
Yeah, and our other colleagues are up on the screen. There they are, looking all good and bright and cheery this morning. So move that the apologies for Jeff be accepted. Seconded Councillor Bunting, all in favour. Okay, are there any declarations of interest across the items today? We did do the confirmation of the agenda. We just did it in the wrong order, sorry. No, there being none, and nobody in public forum that we're aware of today. So we'll go to the first item, which is the confirmation of the open minutes of the 8th of December with its attachment. Thank you. Councillor Wilson moves, seconded by Councillor Van Oosten. All in favour? Okay, opposed, carried. Okay, next item is the Chair's report, which is, I'll just take as read, there's really not much to say on it. We all know what the year that's coming up with the long-term plan, right? And just one plea for everyone. We're going to have lots of public engagement and consultation. I really welcome your support in getting it out to as many of your groups and contacts that you have. And you'll have plenty of opportunity to get alongside me in the messaging and also the events in the community, the engagement events. So if we can all push hard to get as many people engaged in our work, that's going to bring us success in the long term. Thank you. Any comments, questions? Oh, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Look, while it's not specifically mentioned in your report, when you're talking about Haepau Manawa, or it raises the issue that's just come up in the last week of the Māori wards referendums law change. And I'm wondering if I can have your liberty to ask that staff be arranged to give us a report at the earliest possible stage on the timeline and the options that are open to us there.
Yes, so Becca and I have already had this conversation the very day after.
Yep.
Because I realised that that's something that we've got to tackle with some urgency, and of course Becca had already been doing some pre-work around that. She might want to make a few comments, but on the Zoom meeting the other day I also talked about how I'd address that with the media when they asked me the question, which is that we will engage in a full conversation before we make any comment on whether there will or there won't be Māori wards. And of course, that includes working with our Māngai, and they're not present here today.
Yeah.
So, Becca?
Yes, so I'm just currently just putting together a whole bunch of information. So by tomorrow you'll have the initial timeline and information around, around the timelines and how they've changed, and a way forward if you want to pursue investigating that route. So not far away.
Will that then be on the agenda for perhaps the next council meeting or a special meeting? Because I understand there's if you wanted to do some options anyway, there's extremely limited time frame.
Yeah, so it's been extended to 21 May in terms of making an initial suggestion. So we have got a little bit of time, but
Okay.
it is definitely on my top priority and urgency around this. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I
Rest
think
assured.
it will come to a council meeting, but it may also come to one of our workshops where we can really get stuck in on, because I think, the shades of grey and black and white is never the way in local government, so we need to really talk about the pros, the benefits with all the right people.
Thanks.
Okie doke. Good question, though. I think we were all thinking that when we opened up the Herald on Sunday and started to read the announcement. Waikato Regional Theatre funding deed. Oh, I do want to move the Chair's report. Thank you, Mark. Moved by me and seconded by you. Brilliant, thank you. All in favour? Thank you.
Chair, I think you've left out item... If I look at the run sheet, you've got item 8, which was to be heard before the Chair's report with the external presenters. Has that changed, has it?
Can you say it was Oh, okay, the staff haven't actually arrived for item 8.
Okay, that's fine. I just
And
thought that
I've
was
got
the
them
order.
the other way round on here, but that's okay. So we're on item 7, the Waikato Regional Theatre funding deed. The staff are here for that?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Sean. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. This paper really follows on from meetings, a range of meetings and sessions last year with regards to the draft funding deed between Council and the Waikato Regional Theatre Trust. Most of you, I think, will recall we had a meeting with at the end of the year with the Strategic Risk and Audit Committee, who reviewed the funding deed and gave their tick for it to be put forward to Council for final approval for execution by the CE. I would note that whilst we're looking for your approval to accept or to execute the funding deed, we won't necessarily execute it straight away, as there are a few bits of information still required from the Trust, and obviously we'll be wanting to double check all the terms that they're being met on the way through, and although we are confident that they have been, but it won't be for signing straight away, and certainly the funding schedule is a separate issue once the deed's been done, so it doesn't trigger automatic funding either, because the funding will be subject to a schedule that has yet to be advised by the Theatre Trust. So other than that, I'm happy to take any questions through the Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Ms Southgate. Thanks, Sean. I couldn't re-find the funding deed. I know we already had that. There wasn't a link in the report. But just wanted to check that on page 29, Roman numeral 4, where it says we can appoint, it says HCC can appoint an independent observer. When and how will we do that? What's the process around it?
Well, actually, that's a good question. I discussed that with the CE this morning. Basically, we will begin a process for that appointment straight away once this funding deed's approved. The how, I haven't actually got the actual process, but we anticipate we will come back to Council for approval on both the how and then ultimately the selection that we would propose to put forward for that appointment.
Okay, and so that will come back. And just checking again, sorry, my apologies, I couldn't find the funding, the deed that we saw before Christmas. But and this is just a little niggle, we're talking about HCC in here. We are talking about council, aren't we?
Yes.
So like if it says that HCC can appoint or HCC will receive reports, it's council.
Correct.
Yeah, great, okay, thank you.
Good
Okay.
point.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A couple of questions, Sean. On page 29, paragraph 26, under the default event, where it states if the trust becomes insolvent, does that refer specifically to the Waikato Regional Property Trust, or is it Momentum Trust?
The Waikato Regional Property Trust.
Okay, so where does Momentum fit in terms of the build? Are they a guarantor or a... and just if I can follow on, because you can probably answer it all in one sentence. If an event does occur, where does Momentum fit in terms of a party to the default event and any work that they may need to do with Hamilton City Council?
Well, Momentum won't be a party to the actual build, and no longer are, to the build of the theatre itself. Their role has purely been to facilitate and augment the process, to get the construction underway, to get the funding secured, and to appoint the independent, Waikato Regional Property Trust to do it. So with the formation of the trust, Momentum's role ceases. So all of our arrangements, the funding deed and everything is with the property trust. Having said that, Momentum have continued to provide some support service and guidance to the trust during a sort of transition period, but the relationship will be very strictly with the Waikato Regional Property Trust, not Momentum.
And you and Tompkins Wake are quite comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. Last question. Are there similar funding agreements in place for the other funders? And here I'm referring specifically to Waikato Regional Council and to Trust Waikato.
Yes, there are. They have their own formats for agreements, and as I have sort of reported previously, we have shared our draft funding deed with them in early stages of drafting and also the latest iteration, including sharing the council reports that have been related to it, so they have full knowledge of what we've been doing, and I have had verbal feedback from both of those organisations saying that they're comfortable and they will be going through their own sign-off as well. We won't, whilst we may sign a deed at some stage, and this deed in the future, we won't make any payment or any action until all those other people have signed up as well. So we've made sure that we're aligned and we've got transparency across each other.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Naidoo.
Thank you. Hi, Sean. Just, can you please clarify just this one point, because I couldn't make sense of it. Under the default event, point number 4. Thank you.
So basically what that's saying is that if the trust just finds that it is over budget, and if there is a challenge for them to raise the money that they require, then that could trigger the default event whereby they cease to operate or they decide to step back and say we can no longer do this. So that's if that were to happen. We are very clear in our funding deed and all of our discussions that council is not beholden to them to help them any further with funding and so forth. But if they choose to default, then the triggers that we have provision for within this deed of funding could be exercised so that we can work towards a solution or an alternative arrangement.
Gotcha.
And how that manifests itself will depend very much on how and when that sort of instance occurred, if it ever occurred.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Question to Sean or the Chief Executive. In reference to page 29, it's clear that the initial allocation of 6,350,000 that's already been paid out. Can I have a confirmation which of the two entities was that paid out to? Secondly, in light of the fact that the trust funding deed is only in reference to the balance of some 18,650,000, do I assume then Council has lost all recourse on the 6.3 million we've already spent?
If I could answer that question, the money that has been paid previously by Council went to the Momentum Foundation, or the Momentum Waikato, as they were the instigators and the managers, if you like, or leaders of the total project. The funds that they received were put into a special trust account, which was to be used only for the planning and, or the purposes of the planning and advanced preparations for the build, design and construction and so forth. And then the balance, that account or that balance shifted to the Waikato Regional Property Trust. So the funding is purely for theatre and tagged as such, and the balance that the residual balance that exists goes across to the trust, and it will be notionally under the trust. The second part to your question is that this deed actually, whilst it might sound retrospective, does actually cover the full amount of Council's $25 million. It's not related to the final set of payments to be made.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Then I draw your attention upon that answer to page 29, first paragraph, where, one, it says specifically, this deed, therefore, relates to the remaining funding of 18,650. In light of your previous answer, whereas it in writing that the initial 6,350,000 is protected by the conditions stipulated in this funding deed.
Look, I'm sorry, I don't have the council papers in front. Could you give me the number?
Sure. Page 29.
Yeah.
The heading was construction funding. First item, the
yes.
reads, the HCC will provide an overall contribution of 25 million for the construction of the theatre. Of this amount, 6,350,000 has already been provided. This deed, therefore, relates to the remaining funding of 18,650,000. That seems to be contrary to the answer you gave.
Yes, it is contrary to the answer I gave, and I would have to check that, but I would hold with my answer. The money that has been paid already has not actually technically gone towards actual construction. It's gone towards the planning for the construction, to the design, build, and so forth. But that's a very good point you raised. But I can assure you the deed relates to the full amount.
So in light of that, Madam Mayor, I wonder if we should hold this item over until we get written confirmation that the initial payment of 6,350,000 is in fact protected under this funding deed. Otherwise, we've exposed our ratepayers to no recourse of $6.3 million.
Sean, can we confirm that before the end of this meeting today?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so Councillor Wilson, we will, I think that's an acceptable move, and Sean can do a bit of legwork now and come back for the meeting ends to finalise this item.
Okay, well, I'm happy with that. Since there's just one more question on the board, I'll take the other question because, it's always helpful to know where that's going. And then we'll lay it on the table till later in the day. Are you happy with that, Ewan?
Yeah,
Okay,
very happy, thanks.
So I have a question from Councillor Forsyth, and we'll take that question. Margaret?
Thanks, Chair. It's kind of related to Ewan's line of questioning. In the staff recommendation, part B, it talks about the funding deed and the asset maintenance grant, which is 1.1, I believe, per year once the building's built. But again, there doesn't seem to be any reference to those ongoing amounts in the on page 29 of the deed. It only refers to the 18 million, the balance. So my question is, we're talking about the ongoing 1.1 maintenance annual contribution in the recommendation, but then there doesn't seem to be any other reference to it anywhere else. Well, as Ewan's pointed out, it seems to be contradictory in construction funding point 1.
Yeah, look, the 1.1 million for the PEMA fund is referred to in the financial considerations section. So there's a table under point 36, and you'll see that that funding has been included in there.
Right. Okay, so it's the 18 million plus the 1.1 million.
Correct.
Right. Thank you. Just a follow-up question, which is, hope Chair you'll allow, but once the building's finished and we're contributing this yearly 1.1, which is significant, what sort of input or what sort of, I suppose, ability to receive some sort of benefit or some sort of income from the theatre does council have?
There is no income opportunity for council from the theatre apart from regular fees that they pay to council, whether it's rates and water and things like that. So there's no income that can be derived from us, to us, as a result of that. The 1.1 million is for the maintenance and upkeep of the property, and restricted to property-related costs to support them on that. So, but there is no income.
Okay, thank you. 1.1 seems to be quite a lot for a brand new building. Is that usual? I thought that if you've got a brand spanking new building where everything's been met and signed off and compliance, that you wouldn't have to the very next year spend 1.1?
That's correct. However, there are some items in theatre operations which do depreciate rather quickly. The intention of the 1.1, however, is for it to be applied to establish a ongoing fund for renewals for the property. So it might not be fully expended in year 1 or year 2 or year 3, but it would be accrued in a reserve, if you like, for the trust to draw down when they have a year where there's a really big bill, where there might be a $2 or $3 million expenditure item. So it relates to the establishment effectively of their sort of separate fund, if you like, or reserve for repairs and maintenance over time.
Like a body corp type approach. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions that might be usefully tabled? Yep, Councillor.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean. I too had a little bit of trouble finding the original trust deed, and maybe the detail sits within that with regard to drawdowns and the timing of that, especially when it relates to more than or about half of our funds being gifted. Does that also relate to a halfway point of the building process?
If you refer to point 36 of the paper, the table that I mentioned earlier, that gives an indication over the years how the drawdown will occur between the current financial year, next financial year, and the following for the large balance. So that is an estimate of as it's required for the different phases of construction. However, I would say that what you see in front of you is subject to variation depending on how the time frame of the project goes, and that's one of the bits of information we're still waiting for from the Property Trust to, as they finalise their construction program and the cash flow requirements they have for that, and when the timing of the drawdown will be. So that may vary, but we have got an indication for you there how we see it at this point in time.
And that will align with the progress of the building itself?
Totally. And that will align with the report back to us on progress of the building that the Trust do, so that we keep appraised of that and we can link that to ongoing payment schedules.
Okay,
Kia
so
ora,
what I
thank you.
propose to do here is to lay that on the table till the first item after lunch break. Sorry, I'll come to you, Mark, and capture all those questions. But what I wanted to say is that it seems to me that if you could provide the full trust deed for people to peruse the bits that concern them in their lunch break, that would also be helpful. And then we'll, just so everybody knows when it's coming back to us, is that okay? Mark?
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I realise this is a last minute question, but can you just give me some assurance that the Urupā issue and everything is beyond us or past now?
Yes, my understanding and the advice I've received is it's been fully resolved. The Environment Court have approved everything on that front, so that's behind us.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, I think the appeal was lifted just before Christmas, which is good. Okay, so let's leave that one. I move that allow this on the table till after the lunch break. Somebody just second that for me. Thank you, Sarah. All in favour? It's just sitting there for now. Okay, so we'll now go on to the item 8, which is the temporary extension of alcohol control bylaw. It's moved by Councillor Forsyth, it's seconded by Sarah. We'll just go over so everyone because this might be a first time that this council has come across an extension and how it works and what it works for. Welcome to you both. Sorry, I don't know.
Good morning, Your Worship, councillors. Before I start, can I introduce Senior Sergeant Simon Cherry? Simon is the Planning and Operations Manager for Waikato Police and has been doing the planning for the policing responses to the 660 concert. Today is about just trying to obtain council support to consider a temporary extension to the alcohol ban that exists. There is provisions under the alcohol control bylaw for this to occur. To do so at the request of the police in order to help them, assist them with the policing in terms of crime, disorder and or alcohol related harm in the public spaces that surround Claudeland's event ahead of the 660 concert. If I could just refer councillors to two issues. Under the Local Government Act, there are two provisions there for consideration ahead of making an extension to, a temporary extension to the alcohol ban, similar to what we've had in the past with the Sevens events at FMG Stadium. And that is that you satisfy that there's evidence that the area involved in the proposed bylaw change has been or has experienced levels of crime and disorder that either existed or was made worse by the existence and presence of alcohol, and that in the circumstances the proposed ban area is proportionate and appropriate in light of the evidence, and that it's justified and it's seen as a reasonable limitation on people's rights and freedoms.
Okay, thank you. That's reasonably clear. 660 is a big thing. It's a big thing. Can I just ask a question slightly adjacent to that, if I might, Sergeant Cherry?
Senior Sergeant, it's okay.
Pardon?
You can call me Simon, it's fine.
Simon, thank you. In terms of, there has already been a 660 concert, and there were some, big events, they has problems. There were some problems with drinking and some aggressive type behaviour. Because this is a new venue and we're very much looking forward to it. What provisions, are the police comfortable that they can manage that site and reduce or limit the opportunity for people to engage in that same sort of type of behaviour?
Yeah, yes, it's a new venue for us, and it's something that we're working with Claudeland's and the event staff there and council staff there, and looking at how we can move that forward for similar concerts in the future. It's a great venue there. The problem for us is the public park, Claudeland's Park, just north of where the concert's going to be. And that's going to be the great unknown for us, because it's a highly dense area, Fairfield, Enderley, those estates close by. And we're just conscious that people could be coming in and listening to the concert for free, and then bringing picnics, alcohol with them, and there's, well, that's what it is. So then there's a potential for disorder from that, obviously. So that's where we're going. You've seen Wangaramatā and what happened up there, and now that got out of hand really quickly.
Yeah.
So we've been planning for that. We've got, I think, about 45 staff, along with 160 security staff that will be there. We've been meeting with the venue organisers and 660 management staff. I've just been speaking to the latest concert, which was in Hastings a couple of weeks ago, and getting the feedback around that and how that went. So, relatively confident. I've got staff at the moment. I'll be there. My inspector will be there. Inspector Thornton, he'll be the OC for the event. And with these, this is part of the provisions that we're trying to build in, that we make it a safe event for all people attending, including families, including our gang members, including everyone that will be there.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. So no picnicking, councillors. Get a ticket. Get a ticket.
Water.
Question, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon. I'm not sure whether this is best for you or for Calvin, but I was just interested in a more permanent ban of alcohol in some of these areas around Claudelands, because probably it won't stop people, but there is a lot of consumption of alcohol within the park that you can see, you know, bottles and cans left over in the morning, and doesn't really seem to be maybe a good reason for it to not be permanent. I'm just interested.
Perhaps I could take that one.
Yeah.
I can add a bit. Go on, Kelvin.
The alcohol control bylaw is in fact up for review in the middle of this year.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that that's probably an appropriate time to look at that, because I know it also touches into other ones that have been raised, such as Steel Park and others, and I think there is a danger in us trying to look at this in a piecemeal and doing a single park at a time. I think that's the appropriate time to have the wider conversation.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have that.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Everyone's in favour. Thank you very much, and thank you for the work that the police do around safety in the city. We've and through Angela's working party too, we've got a really close connection, and we do appreciate that. Sure. We make really good progress when we work closely together. So thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay. We're whipping through it. Just to let you know, by the way, if there's a morning tea at 11, shouts on me. A sort of happy welcome back for everyone. But so we'll keep going till 11, and we're getting through things nicely. Making item 9.
Won't be here after lunch.
Shh, shh. I wasn't going to say it out loud. I wanted to, and I refrained.
Can you please go over picnics just by Claudelands, please, Mr. McPherson? Take a bottle of wine.
Yeah, plan change 6. Go. Are you going to take it as read, or do you want to?
Yeah, just take it as read. Mayor, this is really a procedural matter. There's a specific requirement in the Resource Management Act that requires full council to make a plan change operative. We've gone through an extensive process. This is really the conclusion of that, and there's really nothing to say more than that.
Yeah, I think Councillor McPherson moves second, and Councillor Pascoe. I just think, just for the new councillors, if you could just give a paragraph, no more than that, explaining how REAP went through its process and that, and then this is the final bit, isn't it, of that, those changes.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. For the elected members who at the tail end of this process, the Regulatory and Efficiency Project was an initiative of Mayor King. It started in 2017, went through a very thorough process of analysis, information gathering, stakeholder engagement. The result of those findings recommended a series of amendments to the Hamilton City District Plan. The council agreed to the suite of those amendments. That was notified. We went through a public plan change process. Council resolved that independent commissioners should hear that. That was heard last year during the COVID lockdown. We had a hearing on that. We had one appeal that was lodged that was resolved through mediation on the papers, and an Environment Court issued a consent order confirming the settlement of that appeal. The plan change is complete, and the last stage of the process that started in 2017 is your decision today to make it fully operative.
All right, everybody happy with that? Because there's a lot more to come with district plan now. That's that bit. And we move on to the bigger, somewhat more complex arena. Thank you very much. It's been moved. It's been seconded. All in favour? Yep. Yeah, everyone on Zoom. Can't see Margaret. Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Done. Have a good day.
Thanks for holding us up, Luke.
Okay.
What?
Never had it so easy, goodness. Item 10, district plan amendments. Oh, yep. Yes. Did we just do that one? No. We're on item 10, the district plan amendments committee draft terms of reference, which is on page, well, what page am I on? 42 on diligent.
Yes, so I'll just take the report as read. I've got Luke here to respond to any specific technical questions if there are any.
Councillor, I've got a few questions, sorry. I'll take them in order if that's okay. Councillor Pascoe.
Thanks, Chair. My only question is, I thought the terms of reference were quite wide and vague, and I don't mean that as a criticism, but I think given that it's a kind of $15 million spend, I've thought that perhaps the terms of reference that might have come to us could have been a little more specific. Was there a reason for that? Or is my interpretation perhaps not the direction that the committee being set up might go?
Well, Councillor Pascoe, through you, Mayor Paula, I wouldn't characterise them that way. I think the important bit here is that the scope of the work of what the committee will address, you've resolved that. There was a report that I took to council on the 8th of December last year, and there's a link to that to the scope of the project. So the scope is very clear. So the detail of what the committee will be dealing with is contained in that report, of which you resolved to support. The terms of reference is more, from my perspective, around how the subcommittee will work to guide the delivery of that scope. So rather than just reintegrating all of that into the terms of reference, that's a decision that's been made, that's been resolved. The terms of reference, and equally these are broadly what was also contained in that report, but because that report was seeking the creation of the subcommittee, this is a governance matter to say, okay, these are the broad parameters by which they work. The counter to that is that staff might enter into a degree of prescriptiveness that elected members and the committee themselves haven't determined. So the scope's very clear. That's what you've agreed, and how the committee works to influence the delivery of that scope is really what the purpose of those terms of reference are.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Just one other quick question. It's called the District Plan Amendments Committee. I had thought from the scope that we discussed last year that we would ultimately end up with a brand new district plan. So I'm just wondering whether the name of the committee just if we think it's only an amendment to the district plan, have I got that wrong too, or
yeah,
is it the new district plan?
So it will result in, I suppose, from one perspective, it will result in a new district plan in the sense of very substantive amendments, but it is not a full review, right? And that was spelled out in the report and what was in the scope of the report. Yep. I'm very open to changing the name of the subcommittee if that's something that the committee or council wants to change. But the amendments are substantive, they are far-reaching, but I did point out in that report, and that was agreed in the scope as well of council, of what was in scope and what was out of scope.
I see Councillor Dave nodding that he probably had a question that was similar, and I wonder whether we do change that so that we.
So let's do that in debate.
Yep. Okay.
But, unless you want to ask Luke if there is an alternative way of dealing with that as a question, or you have.
Well, I think he's already indicated to me that there is an alternative way.
Right. So
Yep,
you'll
thank you.
talk to that in the debate, and we can, or before we put that, and then we can. Then we can see, Rob, what we can do.
No, that's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor McPherson, you're next.
I did have an identical question to that last one of Rob's. Amendments is definitely the wrong word given what we've talked about. But perhaps, and I'm happy to put this forward with Rob or support Rob or whatever, just to call it the District Plan Committee. I was thinking of with updates and that, and then you get into what's a word mean and all of that. Just call it the District Plan Committee, then it's got the scope will do that. It's the amendments actually sends the wrong signal to the public, or only half the signal. So that's why what I would support what Rob said.
Okay, and you don't see any issue with that, Luke?
No, I mean,
Okay,
that's
so
completely
absolutely
acceptable,
then, isn't
totally
it?
resolvable. Yeah.
Perfect, so we'll resolve it that way, but we'll get to that for the resolution.
I did have, sorry, just another question. This, Luke, is only one side of what's happening. I am presuming that there's also going to be a series of council workshops as part of it. This talks about the formal committee side of it, but how do we feed in to that committee and to the staff working for that committee?
Absolutely, and you may or may not recall that I made that very clear that the report I took to you in December was saying, here's the problem that we're facing, here's the things that we need to do, here's the scope of the work that needs to occur over the next couple of years. The one way from a governance perspective that had particular advantages to making sure there was focused elected member input was this subcommittee, but that certainly did not preclude or certainly did not contemplate at all wider councillor involvement, and the briefings and the topics of that are yet to be determined. That's something we'll work through with you, but at the moment I don't have a calendar or a program of that, but it's certainly envisaged that will be occurring.
Yeah.
Well, will that come back to either the Strategic Growth Committee or to council, the whole process?
Yeah. Either one, but we did say in the report last year that we would, and in the resolutions, that this district plan committee would be providing updates to full council.
Yeah,
so
but there's got to be something that predates, what work are we giving the committee? Rather than just say, here's the district plan, go to it, guys, and come back in 18 months.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, and I think there needs to be a synergy between the workshops, for want of a better word, and the work of the committee, and then the report back. So I think that's our intent, is to make sure that there's some connect between
the first meeting of the committee's been established for the 4th of March, and all of these issues are things that we would want to talk about exactly that. How will the committee interact with and feed into the strategic growth of full council? What's the program of works?
So before that, I'd suggest that we have an elected members' time for us to feed in what our expectations of such a committee would be.
I sense that people are pretty happy that the committee is going to do the detailed work, but the rest of the council wants to make sure that all of those things we've discussed over the last 3 years, they say, wish we'd put them in the district plan, are actually up for discussion.
Absolutely. So they've got sorted that process. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Just two questions, two things I'd like to explore. One of them is the makeup of the committee, and I'm not sure whether this is the right item to bring it in, but I notice we've got one Māngai, James, but should we have written in there that if James can't make it, there is another Māngai that will take his place? Because I see their role is quite specific, and if they can't make it for any particular meeting or area.
I think that's a fair point, or alternative. James was selected because of his particular...
Yes, absolutely,
yeah. Look, I'm really happy with that. It's a great suggestion. I think the paper that outlined the formation of this committee was silent on composition. That came through the discussion and agreement amongst elected members, and equally the nomination of James was a matter for Māori. So my personal recommendation would be for me to contact James and to say, there's a willingness or there's a desire for an alternate. Can you please let us know who you think that alternate should be?
Yeah, if you work it out, as long as it's representation.
We're just talking with Becca that there is a way to deal with that within the frames of the contract for Māngai and other things that we can work through. So if you just have confidence that Becca will work through that detail for the right intent.
Thank you. Yeah, great. And my second question now, let me just get this into context. There's 15 million tagged for this in the LTP.
That's correct.
Ahead, so it hasn't been approved yet. Say it is not approved. Say there's a major ratepayer revolt about this. What is likely to happen?
If there was a decision made by council not to fund the amount that staff had requested to complete this project, I think what we would need to do is then to determine, can we still deliver the scope that was approved by council in whatever the revised budget would be. So that's a matter for staff to analyse and to assess should that decision be made. But at this point, we're working on the basis that council's made a decision at a draft level to include that budget, and until such time as that's changes, we're continuing to work on that basis. If it does change, we'll have to determine what the impact that has in terms of the scope and timing. Yeah. If there's a significant change in that, we'll have to come back and report to you that.
So do we need to perhaps put some wording in there to that effect, that this is, because we very well may have to come back to this?
Personally, I don't think it's necessary. This report's just about the terms of reference for a group. You've made a resolution around the scope already.
So it's not likely to change in terms of reference?
I don't think the terms of reference would change at this point. The major thing that would change would be the scope of the work and the timing of the work should the budgets change, not the terms of reference and the elected member input and oversight that's required for whatever it is we need to deliver.
And going back to where it was generated with Dave's question, Councillor Bunting, I think the fact that we will have council regularly reporting into that, and before it starts at March 4th, that we'll have a conversation about scope, I think we can pick that up.
Yeah, I guess so.
And keep it,
Yeah.
I know that this is a very important issue for council, so my expectation is there will be regular opportunities for all councillors to understand where we're making the progress, etc., or where the challenges sit.
Yeah, and look, I guess, and I as a governor need to raise at every opportunity that this is a big upgrade in spend from the last time. So I'll bring that up in debate anyway.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. I think you've answered it in terms of the Mongomori representation. That's alternate, yes. But obviously, Becca, as I understand it, on this committee, all councillors received the agenda, the papers, and all councillors and Mongomori are welcome to attend on specific items of interest and will, of course, have speaking rights.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. I don't know if I have an updated mine, but on page 44, it's just a typo in the box under purpose regarding the era bookmark not defined. Is that still just on my end?
Do you see where he's referring to, Luke?
Yeah, it's yes, I would say that it's just an error in the program. So it's that little box that you're talking about directly under the purpose. Yes, I would, where that error bookmark not defined, that is just a quirk in the program and the template.
So what are the common delegations that are meant to be referred to there?
I suspect it's the delegations that are given under our delegations manual and the triennial governance structural agreements that were set out back at the beginning of the term of this council.
Yes, correct.
So that needs to be corrected.
It just needs to be noted that that's what it should refer to, Councillor Ryan.
Thanks. And I think I heard Becca confirming in the background. Is that right?
Yes, she did confirm.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I can't see any more questions. Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah. When you're ready, I'm happy to move the staff recommendation with the omission of the word amendments before the word committee.
Okay, and that's seconded by Dave. Okay. So any further, if anybody moving the original staff motion, let me know. If not, we'll go into debate and then we'll go from there. So debate. Did you want to debate it, Councillor Pascoe, as the mover?
No, I've got nothing further to say.
Anybody? Councillor Bunting.
Yep, thank you. And I will mention it. I'll support it, obviously, because we need to. But I would like to highlight the fact that from what I took from our discussions last year leading into the LTP, it took half as much money to write the LTP as it's taking now. And I appreciate that there is a lot more regulation that's thrust upon us that we have to deal with. I get that. But $15 million is $15 million. And I will raise it at every opportunity. We cannot assume that the ratepayer has agreed to this yet as we go through the LTP. And it really is there in headlights as a part of our LTP plan. So let's not assume that the ratepayer is happy with this. This is $15 million of operational spending. And there will be some more questions as we go. But it seems robust enough to me at the moment. But we better be ready to justify it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McPherson.
I wasn't going to speak until my good friend Councillor Bunty did, but I do want to put a slightly different spin on this. That in many senses, this is the most important piece of work that the council can set up, and is certainly longer lasting than 1, 2 or even 3 LTPs potentially, which is why I would defend this in the LTP and think it's absolutely in the public interest that we support the staff recommendation for that money. Of course, no one's happy with spending $15 million on a piece of bureaucracy, but if we don't get that piece of bureaucracy improved, we're going to end up with the sorts of outcomes like poor quality infill housing, greenfield sprawl, all of those things that we've talked about that we don't like in the way the city's developing. We're not going to be able to change them. It's vital we do this. Forget the government wanting certain things. We need certain things as a city, and that's why it's really important for this piece of work. I was also going to say that I supported the Mayor's comment earlier about having a preliminary discussion before the first meeting of this committee, where we'll all have the chance to have some input at that point before 4th of March. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Ryan for his selfless volunteering of his time, of a lot of time over the next couple of years. And I noted a couple of days ago when ruled out of order. A developer congratulated him for taking on for being appointed to the task, but I commiserated with him.
Councillor Gallagher.
I'll try and be concise, and I know Councillor Thompson will probably talk about some of the sustainable, livable cities aspects and her contribution. But I just want to say this is a very important piece of work, and you can either choose to be proactive on behalf of Hamilton Kirikiura or just receive central government edicts in terms of the challenges we have around housing. We will continue to remind ourselves at the moment that we are the 4th largest centre of population in terms of urban Hamilton, but we are the 3rd smallest in geographical area. And basically I'm really looking forward to this committee taking some good live examples of what I would call scungy, ugly developments that have a negative impact on neighbours versus our aspiration through a district plan to have good high density development that can be observed good urban design, how we do that. Secondly, we do have some significant areas of the city, the Hamilton East area, Claudelands for example, that have significant lovely character. And we must be extremely careful that we don't blow away those character areas by a willy-nilly high density covering all of Hamilton. So this is, in any city around the world, you can have a blend of design and good urban design, which of course we must look at intensification. Let me acknowledge Councillor Wilson in terms of encouraging the high rise in the CBD in terms of all of that. So this committee, in my view, I think is going to be extremely important. And what local government must do, its core business, is getting good urban design outcomes with encouraging adequate supply of residential properties and housing, because obviously given the housing crisis this country currently faces. So I do wish Chair Hamilton and Deputy Chair O'Leary well in the huge work that you have ahead of you, and I'll be looking forward to being on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Also, just in response to Councillor Mark's comments, this is the most important piece of work we will do this term. If you think about what core business is for this council, providing clean water, safe roads, and a well-considered district plan that works, that provides the outcomes that we want for this community. That's core business, and while it is a lot of money, we need to do it right. We only do this every 10 years or slightly more frequently than that, but we don't want to have a district plan where we only went halfway or part way and then we're stuck with that for another 10 years. We're looking at urban design outcomes, and we hear a lot of people unhappy about poorly designed developments. So while they're also unhappy about paying more rates, they're going to be very unhappy about having an eyesore right next door to them. So there are critical things that we have to address in this district plan. It's also providing more developable land for housing. We've talked a lot about affordable housing, and this is our opportunity now. Providing a compact city that enables cycling to actually work in the city, public transport to work in the city, and doing a lot of work to protect biodiversity in the city as well, by putting in our natural significant areas overlays. Right now we're losing our gullies by death by 1,000 cuts, and we have to stop that urgently. So this is worth the money that it's going to cost, and just wanted to, I guess, emphasise that as we head into the LTP discussions.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Just to make a few comments myself before, if you want to write a reply, that's... we all agree this is an extraordinary amount of money, and we all agree it's one of the most important planning exercises that we go through. I just remind people that the government has made changes that we must give effect to. The NPS, National Policy Statement for Urban Development, is a key one because it's quite different from the provisions under which we're working in the current district plan, as we know. They've also talked about climate changes, and the first raft of changes to address climate came out a few days ago. Even something as simple as how a house may be heated and so on can have implications for the development community and for our building codes and our district plan and how we want spaces to be built. Plus, of course, we know that the community are asking us to do more about climate and to build our new suburbs and subdivisions in a way that takes care of that natural environment. But the other thing is, of course, not that long ago, last year, we were all very vocal at what we saw as the poor quality pockets of infill in our city. And we were all very vocal of about the rights of existing residents to enjoy a reasonable amenity in their neighbourhood. While we do promote and support infill development, we want it very much done the right way. The cost, I'd love to talk more with central government, and I will, because it's often the legislative process itself that binds us to costlier and longer processes. Be talking about the review of the Resource Management Act as one piece of legislation for a very long time, and still it's not streamlined the way that we've been promised it will be. So we do need to talk to government about making it easier for councils to be agile in the way they amend and flex and adapt their policies. And until that happens, unfortunately, we are bound by certain processes and timelines that we might not agree to, but we get the job done. So thank you very much. Thank you to your team, Luke. You do a great job on this work. It's never ending. It's like painting one end of the bridge and you get to the next end, you've got to come back and start again, but paint it all a different colour. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Councillor Pascoe? Yes, thank you. I would like to exercise right of reply. I think in our discussions at the moment, we need to be careful in not preempting
the likely feedback that we will get from residents. And I refer, Mayor Paula, to your chair's report, where you said how important the feedback and the consultation process will be around the long-term plan, irrespective of the $15 million spend. And, you know, I'm hoping we'll get some feedback from residents on that. Some work will always be needed on the district plan. You know, we're continuously amending it, as we did through the REAP review, and the last report, of course, was an outcome of that review. We also need to be careful, and this is where I think the committee may have a good purpose, around the caution around the government mandates. You know, I think what we've seen in the NPSUD, in my view, has been a one-size-fits-all. And I think we need to be careful, and I'm hoping that this group will work judiciously to try and get an outcome around the government mandates that are more Hamilton-centric, rather than one that's been designed for another metro city in New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been moved. It's been seconded. All in favour, please raise your hands. That's everyone. Thank you. Oh, and me. Thank you. Moved. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us now on to item 11, which is the draft schedule of reports for council and committees for 2021.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paula. Happy to take this report as read and receive any questions if there are any.
Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah, look, if I could just advise the committee, Tracy and David and the finance team are currently working with governance on the possibility of moving some of the finance meetings to a later point during the month, purely just to facilitate more up-to-date reports coming to that committee. So whether we can get slots in this year remains to be seen, but certainly it'll be a work in progress that hopefully, if it doesn't happen this year, will flow through into the following year.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pascoe.
Okay, thank you. Somebody happy to... Oh, no, sorry, I do have more questions. Councillor Gallagher.
No, it's just... yeah. Can Becker and the governance team confirm that this is an excellent format and is very helpful to all elected members?
Yes. Confirmed, Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Martin stole my thunder. It is a much easier document to read. My only quibble is that you've got the strategic growth, the committee I chair, in blue.
Oh. I'm pretty sure Becca can alter that immediately. All right. Oh, question from Councillor Hamilton.
I'm just having technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
Hand.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. And it's been moved and it's been seconded. Has it, or has it not? I'll move. Maxine, second. Thank you. In saying that, if there's anyone who wants to debate, but I would just like to say thank you to Becca, you and your team, because I know that this was your idea to collectivise all the data in one place. We know that sometimes regular reports get moved around because of circumstance, but at least this is the starting point where we can all see exactly where various bits of work sit, and gives us confidence that we're not leaving important pieces of work behind. And in fact, I know Councillor O'Leary has spoken many times about having a schedule where we can absolutely tick off what we've done and know what's coming up. So thank you for your great work on that. All right, thank you. All in favour?
One just other small comment to make, and thanks, Paula. Very valid to be able to see what our year looks like, and I'm really grateful to be able to see that over a couple of pages. More importantly, though, I think it's a great tool for our public to be able to see what our work looks like and whether there is areas of interest where they might be able to input into or be present at to help with that further engagement and connection back to the work that we're doing. So, kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. All in favour, please raise your hand. It's all on Zoom and all in here. Thank you. That's. Sorry, Amy, I'm taking your job.
It's all right. It's fine.
All right, that's it. So we're going to move it into. We are coming back to Sean, but you don't. You're not ready for that yet, are you? No. Yes. No.
I'm ready on the key question that we had. Yes.
But did it, so we were hoping to get the deed in people's hands if they want it still. Do you still feel like some of you would like to see the full?
Could I
Okay.
just
So
sorry, Mayor Paula.
No, go.
I was going to say the deed has some elements of confidential information included in it, so
Can we do it in public excluded?
it would prefer if we can actually have that conversation in public excluded, and we can release whatever relevant information to the public post that, but we'd like to retain some of the confidential clauses confidential, if we could, please, Mayor Paula.
Okay. I'll,
Some of the answers to the questions were asked are still should be in public, should they not?
Oh, that's what I'm suggesting, that we share it in public excluded and come back into public, and we can then refer.
Oh,
Yeah. So I'm trying to get the outcome we want by still maintaining some degree of confidentiality, Councillor McPherson. That's all. Two bites at it, put it that way.
okay. Resolution to exclude the public, and we'll do a couple of the more straightforward items.
Sorry, Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could we not deal with, because I understand the only query that was outstanding was whether or not the deed contained the $25 million or the 18 point something million dollars.
Yeah, Sean, do you want to ask that?
And I thought that was the only outstanding query.
I thought that some elected members were keen to have access to the deed before they moved to the report.
Yeah, okay.
But could you want to answer that question?
Thank you, Chair. Just referring back to that question from Councillor Wilson with regards to the clause number 26(1), where we talked about the value of the deed being at 18.65 million. That is actually technically correct, because that is the money that is in question with the deed itself as a part of the deed transaction. However, I would also hold to my verbal answer that the conditions of the deed cover the previous funding, the previous 6.3 million that council has already contributed towards the preparation costs for the theatre. So on one hand, the deed is about the final payment, but on the other hand, all of the condition of the deed scoops up within that the value of the total 25 million that council will have put in. Bearing in mind that the 6 million that went in from council previously actually came from the Vibrant Hamilton Trust and was credited towards council's contribution. So I hope that answers that question for you.
Your Worship, if I may.
Yes, certainly.
My point was I just wanted that to be in writing, that I wanted Momentum, who was the recipient of the 6.5, to acknowledge the earlier quantum is being bound by the same conditions stipulated in the funding agreement. Otherwise, it's simply a verbal commentary from a well-respected GM, but I think we would be left, and our ratepayers would be left very vulnerable if we don't have that specifically acknowledged by Momentum. After all, they've received the funds.
If I could respond to that, I think that's something that we can absolutely do. And might I suggest that we amend the funding deed accordingly and put that statement in that you've suggested, Councillor Wilson, and we'll bring it back to you, probably not today, because I want to work through the lawyers on this, and our lawyer is on an assignment out of town today. So can I suggest I bring it back to the next meeting of council with that final change clause?
Yeah, that sounds like a good solution. So the recommendation would be to receive the report, and Ewan's wording around incorporating that, and the rest of that would the rest of it in terms of B and C would wait until it came back.
Yes.
Right. So can we just get the recommendation, and then we might take a tea break after this before we go. Just coming up on the screen, bear with. Amy's typing furiously, I can hear it. Yeah, sorry about that, just technology. Technology. What is that? What's the chat? What's on the chat? It's 9 thing. Okay. So there's. Can everyone see that on the screen? Just receiving the report, requesting that the proposed funding deed be amended to include reference of the previous contribution of council and is reported to the next meeting. Huh? Reference to. Okay. Happy with that? Everybody happy? In that case, because the deed can be circulated for your reading offline before that next time it comes back, I think we'll move this and then move on. Ewan, would you like to move it?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Thanks, Mayor Paula. Thank you.
Moved Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Gallagher. All in favour, please raise your hands. That's everyone, although I can't see Zoom, so can you see Zoom, Amy? Cool, thank you. All right, everyone, that's great. It's all moved. Thank you. We're planning to have a morning tea at 11 because we've got goodies coming, but I think they're largely here. They're not here.
We confirm, we're just waiting to hear back, but we can.
Okay, but I think we'll take an early tea break anyway and hope that they turn up. Oh, we're going to go do that now? All right, we'll move into... Yeah. I'm easy. We'll move into public excluded. Move Dave. Councillor Thompson. All in favour? Yes, right. We're in public excluded. We'll try and get through the first item, which shouldn't be too complex. And then we'll take a break.